mother was smiling on her face, but in actual reality, her entire body was crying. If you can read Japanese and is a fan of Japanese literature, you may have come across some of the works by Renunciation Akutagawa, commonly regarded as the father of the Japanese short story. And for some reason, this one short line that was written in his 1912 work, The Handkerchief, have always stuck with me. Perhaps this was due to my instinctive realization of how such a short, simple sentence, written already more than 100 years ago, could at the same time still be so profoundly applicable to describe the lives of the vast majority of individuals who are living their day-to-day lives in modern-day Japan. To provide a bit of a context, in The Handkerchief, a mother of a recently deceased son visits her son's professor in order to inform him on his student's death. The mother, while telling the professor the news of her son's passing, maintains her composure and speaks in a completely level tone without a hint of tear in her eyes, and was even able to momentarily smile while discussing her son's death. However, underneath the tranquil facade, the mother is squeezing onto her handkerchief in an ever-tight fashion while her hands shook violently. Thus, the mother was smiling on her face, but in actual reality, her entire body was crying. When you first step your foot into Japan, you'll notice one thing, and that is how a lot of people, from part-time workers at the department store to your fellow coworkers at the firm, all possess this sense of unshakable composure, as demonstrated by the mother in The Handkerchief. But what the professor in the short story could not see was beneath her calm voice and smile was still a vulnerable mother who was mustering all that she had to squeeze onto her handkerchief in order to keep herself together and hide the fact that her entire body was internally crying in agony from the death of her one and only son. And us living in Japan are like the professor in the short story. What we see is the facade, a population of such a well-put-together group of people with an impregnable sense of self-control that allows them to have the poise to never break down externally, even in the most difficult of life circumstances. But what we do not see is a population of people who, underneath the visible surface, are squeezing onto their invisible handkerchiefs with everything that they have, in order to be able to endure through yet another day while hiding their true internal state of being to the outside world. So then, the question has to be asked, what are the exact sources of pain that are causing so many of the people in Japan to have to hold on to their figurative handkerchiefs every day throughout their lives, in order to just be able to keep it all together? For the mother in Akutagawa's 1912 work, it is the pain of losing her one and only son. But for many individuals living in modern-day Japan, it is the pain of being unequivocally alone, the pain of insufferable loneliness. According to a Japanese government survey conducted in 2021 on 20,000 Japanese survey participants regarding loneliness, it was discovered that approximately 40% of the Japanese people were classified as feeling lonely. Needless to say, this is a very, very alarming number. And the Japanese government, more than aware of the nation's loneliness problem, even went on to designate a separate cabinet minister whose sole job is to be in charge of implementing various government measures to fight loneliness and isolation in the country. However, the people in the government are far from the only group of people in Japan who are currently cognizant of Japan's immense loneliness problem. Various business enterprises in Japan at this very moment have identified this gargantuan demand that currently exists in the nation, which is the need for remedies against loneliness by providing a sense of social connection, and are thus creating large financial profits for themselves from the nation's loneliness epidemic by supplying the service in demand. Now, it is important to note that the type of businesses in Japan in which we'll discuss in today's video do not only target people who can be classified as being lonely. In fact, some of the people who frequently utilize the types of paid services mentioned within the video could be one of the least forlorn people in the world. But due to the very nature of such enterprises and the type of utility they provide, it is also highly likely that the majority of the clientele of such businesses, when asked if they feel lonely in life as done by the 2021 Japanese government survey, will answer with a resounding yes. And please also keep in mind that while there's more to loneliness than an inborn need for connection with a significant other, this video will focus on interpreting the sense of loneliness in such a sense and the businesses that benefit from the acts taken by individuals in Japan who are attempting to fulfill such deficiencies. This is because if you're to define loneliness in its broadest sense of encompassing all social connection or lack thereof, then there will subsequently be so many businesses that could potentially be classified as a loneliness business that it'll be hard to cover all of them in this video. So then, what are some of the notable businesses that currently exist in Japan that are contributing to the nation's GDP, which mainly targets the immense number of lonely figures within this island nation? This video will be part 1 of a 2-part video series, where part 1 will be dedicated to first introducing the different types of businesses that have largely sprouted in Japan in the recent years or have risen in the popularity that primarily targets the immense size of the lonely population of Japan as its main clientele and play a role in the Japanese economy by supplying the services in demand. Part 2, or our next video, will focus on delving deeper and analyzing the set of businesses that were introduced in this video and discuss both the pros and cons of the rise of such loneliness businesses in Japan. So coming back to this video, instead of just listing these number of businesses that exist in the Japanese economy, we will just continue to call them loneliness businesses from this point onwards, by the way, in the form of ABCDE. We thought that it would be a fun idea to introduce them in the form of a first-person narrative of a fictional Japanese character named Masa in relation to his lifelong struggle against loneliness in its progressive stages. But while the diary and the character Masa may be fictional, the types of Japanese enterprises introduced in the story are more than real, with all of the mentioned businesses within the storyline being present in Japan as of right now and growing in their prevalence. I would like to borrow the words of Fyodor Dostoevsky on this one in his novella Notes from Underground. Dostoevsky's work, Notes from Underground, was a novella told in a first-person narrative of a civil servant living his life in 19th century St. Petersburg. Before starting off the novella, Dostoevsky wrote, "The author of the diary and the diary itself are, of course, imaginary. Nevertheless, it is clear that such persons as the writer of these notes not only may, but positively must exist in our society when we consider the circumstances in the midst of which our society is formed. He is one of the representatives of a generation still living. And with the current generation of Japan being one of the loneliest generations in the history of the country, with almost 40% of the people admitting to feeling lonely and isolated in life, our fictional character Masa can also very well be considered as one of the representatives of a generation still living in this island nation of 125 million people. And for many of our viewers who have watched our channel for a while, you'll know that I, having lived decade-plus years in Japan ever since coming to Tokyo for university back in 2012, came to develop an intense dislike towards the quote-unquote Queer Japan narrative created primarily by the Western media to depict the people of the nation as a group of quirky, eccentric people living in some type of another dimension virtual fantasy land that enjoy participating in activities such as eyeball licking and, for crying out loud, rent out an entire fake family of wife, daughter, father, mother, dog. Just know, as much as the proponents of the Weird Japan narrative would be disappointed to find out, the people in Japan are still very much real people, just like you and I, and have the sense of discretion and understanding of just what point is taking things too far. Even the loneliest of individuals at the very extreme stage of loneliness will still most likely think that having a wedding with a human-sized pillow with the painted face and body of an anime character is still taking things too far, and would rather die of loneliness than to take such measures. So while the different types of loneliness businesses that are introduced throughout our story may not be as sensational or eye-catching as licking each other's eyeballs for intimacy or marrying a damn pillow as often introduced by the Western media, you can be rest assured that these businesses and services that are mentioned and integrated into the storyline are the types of businesses that are actually currently developing in Japan and are increasingly being used by the real individuals residing in the island nation.
今回は皆さんに紹介したいと思う特別なものがあって動画を作成しますが、いつも動画の企画と資料調査に疲れている夫の力を減らすために、そして私がとっても好きなものなので自分で紹介することになりました。でも私は英語が苦手なので日本語で話すことをあらかじめご了承ください。私は日本のコンビニに入るとワクワクしたことがよくありました。今日はどんな新しいお菓子があるのかなと思うと心が躍りました。それだけに日本のコンビニのいろんな食べ物は美味しいものが多いということは海外でもよく知られていると思います。日本での生活を思い返しながら海外のコンビニやスーパーで日本の代表的なお菓子を楽しむことがあります。しかし期間限定や季節ごとに変わる限定版のお菓子などを食べることは難しいです。それで私のように日本の食べ物が好きな方々がぜひ体験してほしいと思う東京釣りと桜子をご紹介したいと思います。東京釣りは 最大20種類のお菓子が詰まったボックスを我が家の玄関先まで配送してくれるニオンスナックの欠陥購読システムを提供しています。ニオン現地独占のスナックやユニークな限定版、季節ごとに特色あるスナックが組み込まれたボックスです。今回はバレンタインデーのテーマでニオンで一番売れているチョコレートお菓子キットカットの特別な味といろんな甘いものがたくさんあります。その中でもあると私が大好きなものは甘辛ポテトチップでした。そして桜子も同様に欠陥購読のお菓子ボックスですが、こちらには日本のお菓子メーカーをサポートする日本の伝統的なお菓子や職人が作ったお菓子など、日本の伝統を存分に感じることができる特別なボックスであります。また伝統的なお茶と美しいお皿もセットになっています。ここにはサクサク食感のせんべいといちごあんが入れてるいちご餅もとっても美味しかったです。伝統の美味しいどら焼きも久しぶりに食べました。どの国にいても海を越えて日本の特別なお菓子が詰まった作り物を受け取り気分は素晴らしいものです。欠陥購読で毎月1回異なる特別なお菓子ボックスをお受け取ることもできるし、月ごとに構成される楽しいテーマのお菓子ボックスを一度だけ体験することもできますので、私のように特別なプレゼントを受け取る気分を味わいたい方、大切な友達や恋人に贈りたい方はぜひ以下のリンクから購入してください。本当に忘れられない思い出になるはずです。
I realized recently that I have never really known another person in my entire life. Yeah, I have some people here and there who I talk to, but as in no another genuine human being, never. If I keep this up, I'll most likely die without ever connecting to another person, let alone date or get married. I have to take action, but how? I really don't want to be known as a weirdo around the company who goes around and try to start conversations with other coworkers. So that's a big no, especially in my country of Japan. And the same goes to in public as well. I can't just start a conversation with a person who's sitting at the park. They'll probably run away immediately or call the police. Also, it's not like I'm part of any group or activity outside of work either. And there's no way that I'm going to those shady establishments at Kabukicho that are ran by the Yakuza, or try to talk to the standing girls in the area who are only there to get money from me so they can then spend it on male hosts. I'm not that desperately lonely, at least not yet. And it's not like I want something physical anyways. I just want to be able to talk and connect with someone in person. So what can I actually do? I feel so lost. I believe I have an idea. I've always wanted to move to a place that's closer to work, and it seems like now is the right time to do exactly this. Why? Because while scrolling through TikTok to look for some potential apartments, I've came across an interesting real estate company by the name of Girls Rental Real Estate. With their motto of, we want to take care of looking for the right room, as well as also take care of the person who is looking for the room, as well as the corporate promise of providing a dating experience along with apartment hunting, this seems like a perfect way for me to finally be able to talk to and connect with someone without being a creep. I mean, hey, I'm just looking for an apartment, right? These are actual real estate agents with professional licenses. Sotaro. Sitting in my new apartment now, I would like to just reflect back upon how things have went. First of all, I really do think that the apartment hunting process could not have went any better. After contacting the company through Line, they could not have been more kind when it came to hearing all of my needs that I wanted for the new apartment. And when it was time for me to actually visit the potential apartments, they even allowed me to choose the real estate agent whom I wanted to visit the apartments with. After looking through the photos and reading their bios, I chose to go with Miss Misato. I felt exalted to have met Misato and go on house hunting together with her. She did not just show me around the room in a perfunctory fashion, but actually asked me questions about my personal life, and acted as if she was my girlfriend who was to move in with me together to the new apartment. For a second or two, I could really envision myself living together with Misato in this apartment, and just completely forgot about any sense of loneliness that I had before. Maybe she thought so as well, I'm not sure. But we definitely seemed to share a unique sense of connection between us. If she did not think so as well, there's no way that she should have asked me all those intimate questions regarding my personal life. Should have just shown me around the apartment, just like any other real estate agent, right? Anyways, I just signed the contract to the new apartment through Misato 5 days ago. But sitting alone in the new apartment now, I've came to realize that the house feels a little different, a little too empty compared to when I was here together with Misato a few days ago. Maybe I should message her again, see if she wants to go out for some lunch sometime on the weekend. Yep, as I've kind of expected. Misato stopped all contacts with me after the deal for the apartment went through. When I contact her now regarding the apartment, she now replies with a brief, completely formal response that does not leave any room for further conversation. But hey, coming to think of it, this is to be more than expected. After all, the dating experience was literally a part of her job that was clearly delineated as a corporate promise on the website, which means that she was just doing her job. And in a way, I understand that she has to depersonalize things with the client after the deal has went through to keep matters professional, as I'm coming to guess that I'm probably not the only former client who asked her out for a meal afterwards. So yep, back to my normal routine now. Except I'm in a new apartment that is slightly bigger than the previous one and have better proximity to work. But for some reason, sitting here in this empty apartment, I can't help but feel persuaded that I'm even lonelier than before when I had moved, before when I met Misato. Where can I find a more permanent antidote to my loneliness? I've tried out dating apps, all of them, and after experiencing the whole scene, I say, I will never return to these apps, at least not before I have escaped birth, old age, and death. I first signed up to the app Pairs, the most popular dating app in Japan with more than 20 million registered users. And hey, out of these millions of people, there should be at least one significant other whom I can connect with, right? Well, that may very well be the case for many others using the app, but not for me. By the way, I have no intention to condemn the joy of those who get successful matches on the app, but I do have to admit that I am quite envious. So after spending around 4,000 yen a month on the dating app membership for a few months, I gave up. Hey, but perhaps it's not my fault. With Pairs having 20 million registered users, maybe my competition was a bit too steep. So after some thought, I decided to sign up to a little more exclusive dating app with just 200,000 users by the name of Bachelor Dates. Although the monthly membership price that I had to pay for this business was more than double of what I had to pay for the Pairs app of almost 10,000 yen per month, I decided to still have a go at it, as I really liked their corporate promise. The Bachelor Dates app guaranteed a date with a real person once a week, as the AI created by the app developers will automatically arrange the schedule and date with the other person. So I liked how, unlike the other apps, I didn't have to be left hanging without matches and people just ignoring my messages. So I thought, what could be the downside, right? I'll go out on the cafe or restaurant dates that the app arranges for me once a week, and hopefully I can connect with someone like Misato, but on a longer term basis. So there I went on the first date arranged by this Bachelor Dates matching business. I dressed up and headed towards the cafe with exultation. Perhaps today was the day that I finally stopped being lonely. However, after an hour of talking to Miss Sayaka, my arranged date inside the cafe, my hopes completely shattered. She looked disappointed when she first spotted me approaching her between the tables. I believe this is because as this particular matching service had a policy of not showing the face of the date before the actual first meeting, which means that coming to think of it, it is most likely that she did not like the way I look, as I may not have been her type appearance-wise. Quite understandable, actually. And things did not get any better after we began our conversation. After realizing that I was just an average salaryman who makes only around 3 million yen a year, her facial expressions turned even colder. Again, in reflection, I can also fathom why she acted this way, as I've checked on the official app website on how a large number of men on this 10,000 yen a month app were high-paid professionals such as lawyers, doctors, accountants, and the likes. So yeah, I could see how people such as Miss Sayaka could approach this in kind of like a mystery box, a lottery, or a fun game to play, where if they were lucky, their once-a-week AI arranged date may turn out to be a charming doctor, lawyer type. And unlike the male members of this matching business, such as myself, who had to pay a hefty 10,000 yen a month, or more depending on what kind of membership you go for, the female members could just join and use the app for free after a simple screening test, so quite risk-free on her side as well. So in reflection, I can more than clearly fathom why she acted the way she did on our date. And after several more of such date experiences, in resemblance as to what happened with Miss Sayaka, I decided to call this paid dating app quits as well, and thus my proclamation, I will never return to these apps. I believe I have a solution, at least a temporary one. Now that I know that the paid dating websites are just not my forte when it comes to finding someone whom I can genuinely connect with, I have found a number of businesses that allows me to pay a partner by the hour, named Rental Girlfriend Services. Now, it is not as weird as you may think. There is nothing physical about the type of services they provide. And in fact, when I first got onto their website and read the corporate statement, I don't know why, but I shed a few tears, as their message just resonated with everything that I've ever wanted from my life. They talked about how it is okay for me to not have to work so hard and lead all the conversation by myself. They talked about how it is okay for me to show my vulnerable side to the other person. And most of all, they talked about how it is okay for me to talk honestly about my worries and feelings. And by paying just 4,000 to 7,000 yen an hour, I could have such a temporary salvation from my loneliness. And I may not have a good appearance or an interesting personality, but what I do have is my salary that religiously enters my bank account every month of 200,000 yen. As after all, I'm a salaryman, and that is what defines me. So why not try this service out, right? After reading each of their profiles, I think I particularly like Miss Yuko, as she states that her personality type is that of a person who likes serious conversations and listens well. I'm going to enter my credit card details right now and book her for the upcoming weekend. I cannot wait to talk to Miss Yuko, and as they stated on their website, talk honestly about my worries and feelings. Who says that I have to be lonely forever? I'm married now, you may ask, to Miss Yuko from the Rent a Girlfriend website? Haha, I wish. Although I did initially believe that Miss Yuko and I shared a special bond after I hired her girlfriend services quite religiously for almost a year straight, when I eventually took the courage to ask her whether she wanted to continue meeting with me outside of her Rent-A-Girlfriend work, she calmly but also quite resolutely rejected. But at this point, I was not even surprised. I thought that perhaps permanently being alone and lonely was just an organic part of my existence, and me fighting against loneliness was the same as me attempting to swim against the waves. The more I attempt to escape from my current point, the more I get pushed back to a place that's even worse, even more hopeless than before. But as Kawai Hayao has revealed, nothing and sadness compounds the core of our country's culture. And for some reason, I feel quite comforted by this, as this tells me that sadness from loneliness may not be something that only I am suffering from. I mean, the very founder of Japanese analytical and clinical psychology said that sadness is at the core of our country's culture, right? So while I was at a point of complete renunciation and was fully prepared to just ride my loneliness until the eventual old age and death, my mother, whom I talked to around once or twice a year, suddenly gave me a call. She chastised me on why I was still not married, although I have almost reached the age of 40, and told me that there was a girl whom she knew back in her hometown who has also reached the age where marriage was a priority at her current phase in life, and said that I should have dinner together with her. And while I initially declined, I finally obliged after she insisted several times. I mean, it's just one meal, right? And when I met and talked to the person whom my mother introduced, well, it was alright. She wasn't much of a talker, nor did she show a lot of emotion, kind of in resemblance to a bear. But hey, she did clearly seem to be a person who will be a good housewife, cooks her meals well, and will take care of her kids well if we do decide to get married and have kids in the future. So yeah, we had our small wedding ceremony back in her hometown, and she moved together with me to Tokyo, where my work was located at. So you may ask, was marriage finally the right antidote to cure my loneliness? Well, not really. You see, my wife and I did not get married because of love or a true sense of connection between us. We got married because I at 39 and her at 35 have reached that age where society more than expects us to get married and have kids and form a family. So yeah, our marriage is a manifestation of the sense of bond between us. But I believe people in the West may not understand our Japanese sense of bond or kizuna. While one may consider the word bond in a positive connotation, our Japanese sense of bond is the type of bond that's equivalent of being tethered together with another entity through a rope. Literally. So in that sense, my wife and I are tethered together into marriage through the forces of kizuna, with the rope being the external circumstances that aligned well enough for us to get married at this particular point in time, as in our age, background, our relative social status, etc. Not through love. So with not having much connection between us to begin with, we rarely talked inside the house. Don't get us wrong, it's not like we fought or anything. So peaceful and harmonious in the Japanese sense, yes. Vitality in the house, from the sense of joy of being able to live together with your soulmate or the significant other? No. So whenever I feel too lonely and feel the need to talk to someone, I just head to a kebakura or a hostess club now. After all, these are the establishments of Japan where lonely salarymen such as myself are traditionally supposed to visit after work to drink and have conversations. I visit the ones where there is a strict no touching policy, as these hostess bars tend to be cheaper than the ones that allows touching above the waist. And the touching is not what I need anyways. And at least I know that the women there are bar women, so I don't get any false hope, and I can also get some drinks in there as well, which helps me to temporarily forget about everything. So while I was enduring through my day-to-day life, with ephemeral escapes from my loneliness here and there to the hostess clubs, a co-worker from work introduced me to this paid app that he was using on his phone. It was a matching business that allowed married individuals to match up and form friendships with each other. I first denounced him for this, as when hearing it for the initial time, it just sounded like yet another cheating app where sexually frustrated husbands and wives met with each other to form a physical partnership outside of marriage. However, my coworker told me that while that was indeed the case for many married people matching businesses, there were also plenty of them that were not created for such purposes, but for the purpose of matching married people so that they could purely form platonic relationships with each other and discuss their worries and have conversations. When he said this, I still felt a bit skeptical, but decided to give these paid apps a look. Although my coworker was using the most popular married people matching app by the name of Kikon Club, or Married People's Club, that already has 300,000 active users, I decided to pay fees and sign up to another married people only community app by the name of Hillmate. This is as the app said that it had its focus on members who wanted to connect with someone whom they can truly trust, cherish emotional connection with the other person, and form a relationship where we can heal each other from our loneliness. Thus their company name, Hillmate. So yeah, I decided to sign up and give this app a try in the hopes of finding a cure for my loneliness, in which I was not able to do through my marriage. Well, I'm dead now, so it's technically a ghost talking at this point. Why the sudden death, you ask? After 20 years of working almost 12 hours a day, combined with a lifestyle that's completely devoid of exercise, as well as my habit of eating a carb-heavy meal almost every night by frequenting my favorite abura soba place, Menchin, that opens until 3 a.m. and order my favorite
오모리시로내기 한차슈 아바로소바.
I died of heart complications at a rather early age of 43. In Japan, we call this karoshi, or death from overwork. Luckily, my ex-wife and I did not have any kids, so that's a relief in that I did not have to undutifully leave my kids at a young age. And after my ex-wife found out that I was paying a monthly membership fee and meeting someone else through the married people matching business, I told her that there was nothing physical involved, and that I was only using it to talk to others and feel less lonely, she still did not believe me and told my mother and neighbors back in my hometown and soon filed for divorce. She moved out soon afterwards from our Tokyo home and went back to her hometown. I've seen how many abroad think that in Japan, cheating is somehow seen as okay. However, that is only under the condition that we do a good job at hiding our cheating. So once the infidelity is found out, then there is still the sense of public shaming, not in the lines of, I can't believe you cheated, but more in the lines of, I can't believe you didn't hide the cheating well enough and got found out, which is, of course, what happened to me. So while alone in my Tokyo apartment on a weekend, the apartment that was introduced to me by Misato a few years back, I felt a sudden sharp pain in my chest and soon enough, stopped breathing altogether. But hey, don't feel too sorry for me. According to the 2018 Japan Ministry of Health paper on death from overwork, 27,019 people died of cerebrovascular or heart disease in 2015. So I'm not alone here. And because I lived alone, no one realized that I have passed away for more than a month until my coworker found it strange that I abruptly stopped coming to work without submitting a formal resignation. Then he contacted my ex-wife, who visited my apartment, or her old apartment before we divorced, and found me lying cold on the floor. And a day after calling the ambulance and taking care of my body, my ex-wife hired one of our country's booming special cleaning services that specializes in cleaning the house of individuals who have died of kodokshi, or lonely death. And because she covered all the fees for such procedures through money from my bank account, I guess paying for the lonely death specializing cleaning service that was to erase the remnants of my small existence from the world was the last financial payment that I had to make in this lifetime. But hey, I've read somewhere that approximately 30,000 people in Japan die alone in their room in the form of kodokshi, or lonely death, in a year. So I'm not sure if I can say that this is good news, but at least I can say that I'm not such a pathetic being to be the only one to die this way. So yeah, don't feel too sorry for me. Holding on to my handkerchief, I'll manage to get by, as I always have done.